During a routine trial, a black baby's cry echoed through the courtroom. When the judge asked to hold him, everyone froze as tears streamed down his face. The wooden gavel struck the sound block with a sharp crack that echoed through courtroom 302 of the Chicago County Courthouse. Judge Richard Thompson's hand gripped the handle firmly, his knuckles whitening slightly as he maintained order in his court. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the worn carpet. "Next case," he announced, his deep voice carrying the weight of 20 years on the bench. The clock on the wall showed 10:15 a.m. Right on schedule. The bailiff stepped forward, his shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. "Case number 2025J0472, in the matter of Malik Johnson, Your Honor." Thompson adjusted his reading glasses, scanning the file before him. Another custody case. Another child in the system. The familiar rhythm of court proceedings filled the air. Papers shuffling, chairs squeaking, whispered conversations between attorneys and clients. A cry pierced the air. Thompson's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing at the disruption. In the gallery, a social worker held a squirming black baby, desperately trying to quiet him. The infant's wails grew louder, bouncing off the high ceiling and mahogany walls. "Ms. Carter," Thompson addressed the social worker, "please step outside if necessary." "I'm sorry, Your Honor," she replied, bouncing the baby gently. "He's been fussy all morning." His teething. Another cry, louder this time. Thompson felt a headache building behind his eyes. He'd handled hundreds of cases involving children, but something about this one, this cry, struck a different chord. "Proceed," he ordered, gesturing to the state's attorney. But his attention kept drifting to the baby. Malik. The name on the file matched the child whose cries now competed with the attorney's presentation. "Your Honor, Malik Johnson, age 13 months, came into state custody following the death of his mother in a car accident 3 weeks ago. No father listed on the birth certificate. No living relatives have come forward." Thompson nodded mechanically, but his mind wandered to 5 years ago. The sterile doctor's office. The sympathetic look on Dr. Marshall's face. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson," the doctor had said, "but the tests confirm complete infertility. There's no chance of having biological children." Sarah had tried to be supportive, but their marriage had already been crumbling. The infertility diagnosis was just the final crack in their foundation. The divorce papers came 6 months later. "Judge Thompson?" He blinked, realizing the attorney had asked him a question. "My apologies. Please repeat that." "We're requesting temporary state custody while we locate potential foster placement." The baby's cries had subsided to whimpers. Thompson watched as Malik gripped the social worker's blouse, his tiny fingers wrapping around the fabric. Something tightened in the judge's chest. "Ms. Carter, how many potential placements have been identified?" Thompson asked, surprised by the roughness in his voice. "None yet, Your Honor. With his age and current circumstances, it's been challenging." Current circumstances. The unspoken reality hung in the air. A black baby boy in an overcrowded system. Statistics and probability calculations ran through Thompson's mind. Years of experience painting a grim picture of Malik's chances. "Your Honor," the state's attorney continued, "given the circumstances, we recommend." Malik's cry cut through again, this time with a different pitch. Not angry or fussy. Something else. Something that made Thompson's hands grip the edge of his desk. "Ms. Carter," he heard himself say. "Bring him here." The courtroom fell silent. Even the court reporter's fingers froze above her stenotype. Ms. Carter stood uncertainly, looking between the baby and the judge. "Your Honor," she questioned. "Bring him to the bench," Thompson repeated, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. Ms. Carter approached slowly, her heels clicking against the floor in the dead silence. As she got closer, Malik's cries softened to hiccups, his wide brown eyes fixed on Thompson's face. Without thinking, Thompson reached out. Ms. Carter hesitated for a fraction of a second before carefully transferring the baby to his arms. The weight felt foreign, terrifying, and somehow right all at once. Malik squirmed briefly, then settled. His small hand reached up, patting Thompson's chin. The touch sent a jolt through the judge's body, awakening something he'd buried years ago. "Your Honor," The state's attorney started. "This is highly irregular." 10-minute recess, Thompson announced, not taking his eyes off Malik. "Miss Carter, my chambers." Now, as he stood, still holding Malik, whispers erupted in the courtroom. Thompson ignored them, focusing instead on the steady weight in his arms. The baby's warmth seeped through his judicial robes, reaching places that had been cold for years. In his chambers, Thompson settled into his leather chair, adjusting Malik in his lap. The baby had stopped crying completely now, his eyes heavy with approaching sleep. "Miss Carter," Thompson spoke softly, "tell me everything about his case. Leave nothing out." She sat across from him, pulling out a thick file. "It's not a pretty story, Your Honor. They never are." His finger traced the tear track on Malik's cheek. "But I need to hear it." As Miss Carter began speaking, Thompson felt Malik's breathing even out, tiny puffs of air against his chest. Outside his window, Chicago's skyline stretched toward the clouds. But for the first time in years, the judge's world had narrowed to the small bundle falling asleep in his arms. He knew, with the certainty that had guided thousands of rulings from his bench, that his life was about to change forever. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, as Malik's fingers curled around his thumb, he felt something else entirely: hope. Miss Carter's voice faded as Thompson stared at the sleeping baby in his arms. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across his chamber's carpet, and the usual sounds of the courthouse seemed distant, muffled. "Judge Thompson?" Miss Carter's voice cut through his thoughts. "Are you listening?" He cleared his throat. "Yes, continue." "As I was saying, Malik's mother worked 2 jobs. Night shift at the hospital, day shift at a diner. The accident happened on her way home from the hospital. Fell asleep at the wheel." Thompson's arms tightened slightly around Malik. The baby stirred but didn't wake. "No other family?" he asked. "Grandmother died last year. No siblings. Father unknown." Miss Carter shuffled through her papers. "We've checked every possible lead." A knock at the door made them both turn. Barbara, Thompson's clerk for the past decade, poked her head in. "Your Honor, you have 3 more cases this afternoon, and Judge Martinez is asking about the Wilson brief." She stopped, mouth slightly open, staring at the baby sleeping in the judge's arms. "Cancel everything," Thompson said. Barbara's eyebrows shot up. "Everything? Everything?" His voice left no room for argument. "And get me Judge Peterson on the phone. I need to discuss transferring some cases." Barbara lingered in the doorway. In 15 years, she'd never heard him cancel court, not even when his divorce papers were served. "Now, Barbara." She nodded and disappeared, closing the door softly behind her. Miss Carter leaned forward. "Your Honor, what exactly are you thinking?" Thompson met her gaze. "You know exactly what I'm thinking. With all due respect, sir, it's not that simple. You're a single man with a demanding career. No childcare experience. The system has protocols. The system," Thompson interrupted, "has failed countless children. I've watched it happen from this very chair." He looked down at Malik. "Not this time. Judge Thompson." "Richard," he corrected. "If we're going to have this conversation, call me Richard." Miss Carter sighed, removing her glasses. "Richard, then. You need to understand what you're suggesting. This isn't a temporary placement. This isn't fostering. You're talking about adoption." "I'm aware." "Are you? Really?" She leaned forward. "This is a baby, a human being, not a case file you can close at the end of the day." The phone on Thompson's desk buzzed. Barbara's voice came through the speaker. "Judge Peterson on line 1, Your Honor." Thompson reached for the phone, careful not to disturb Malik. "Jim? I need a favor." The conversation was brief, professional. Judge Peterson agreed to take over Thompson's afternoon docket. No questions asked. Yet, as he hung up, Malik began to stir. The baby's face scrunched up, a prelude to crying that Thompson had already learned to recognize. "He's probably hungry," Miss Carter said, reaching for the diaper bag she brought in. "Show me," Thompson said. She pulled out a bottle and formula. "You've never done this before, have you?" "No." He watched carefully as she measured the powder, added water, shook the bottle. "But I can learn." Malik's whimpers grew louder. Miss Carter held out the bottle, but Thompson shook his head. "Show me," he repeated. "Everything." For the next hour, Miss Carter demonstrated basic baby care. How to test the milk's temperature, how to hold the bottle at the right angle, how to burp properly. Thompson absorbed every detail with the same intensity he usually reserved for complex legal briefings. When Malik was fed and changed, he stayed awake, studying Thompson's face with curious eyes. "You know this will change everything," Ms. Carter said softly. "Your career, your life." "Look at him," Thompson interrupted. "Really look at him, Ms. Carter. How many more children like Malik are out there? How many files cross my desk every week? I've spent 20 years making decisions about children's lives, all from the safety of my bench." He traced Malik's cheek with one finger. "Maybe it's time I stepped into their world instead." Barbara knocked again, entering with a stack of papers. "Your Honor, the afternoon cases have been reassigned, but the Judicial Board is asking questions, and there are reporters in the lobby." Thompson wasn't surprised. A judge canceling his docket was news. A judge canceling his docket to hold a baby in his chambers? That was headline material. "What do you want me to tell them?" Barbara asked. Thompson looked at Ms. Carter. "What's the first step?" She pulled out a business card. "Home study, background checks, parenting classes. It's a long process, Judge. Months, maybe longer. And Malik? He'll need to go to emergency foster care while." "No." Thompson's voice was firm. "There has to be another way." Ms. Carter was quiet for a moment. "There's temporary guardianship. It would let you care for him during the adoption process. But it's highly unusual, especially given your position. File the papers today." Judge Thompson, "Richard," he corrected again. "Richard," she said carefully. "Are you sure about this? Really sure? Because once we start this process, once word gets out, there's no going back." Thompson looked down at Malik, who had grabbed his tie and was contentedly chewing on it. The expensive silk was getting soaked with drool. Thompson didn't care. "Barbara," he called out, "give me Judge Williams on the phone. He owes me a favor. And find out if any furniture stores deliver cribs same day." Barbara's pen paused above her notepad. "A crib, sir? And whatever else a baby needs. Ms. Carter will make a list." He looked at the social worker. "Won't you?" Ms. Carter studied him for a long moment, then pulled out a notepad. "You'll need more than a crib. Diapers, wipes, formula bottles, clothes, a car seat. Write it all down." Thompson stood carefully, supporting Malik's head the way Ms. Carter had shown him. The baby gurgled, reaching for his face. "Barbara, call my house cleaner too. The guest room needs to be converted into a nursery." "Your Honor," Barbara started, then corrected herself. "Richard, the media will say what they want." He walked to the window, showing Malik the city skyline. "Let them talk. I've made harder decisions from that bench." But as he stood there, Malik's small hand patting his cheek, Thompson knew that wasn't entirely true. This wasn't just another decision. This was his life, changing course in the space of a morning. The thought should have terrified him. The logistics alone were overwhelming. His house wasn't baby-proofed. He didn't know the first thing about childcare. His career would never be the same. Malik yawned, his head nestling into Thompson's neck. The baby's breath was warm against his skin, his weight solid and real. "Ms. Carter," Thompson said quietly, "start the paperwork." She nodded, gathering her things. At the door, she paused. "For what it's worth, I think you might be exactly what he needs." After she left, Thompson sat back down, careful not to disturb the now sleeping baby. His desk was covered in case files, legal briefs, and court documents. Important papers that had defined his life for 2 decades. Barbara appeared in the doorway again. "The crib company needs a delivery address. And Judge Williams is holding on line too. And the reporters are getting aggressive." "And, Barbara?" "Yes." Thompson smiled, his first real smile in what felt like years. "One thing at a time?" She nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "One thing at a time?" As she closed the door, Thompson looked down at Malik. The baby's fingers were still curled around his tie, holding on even in sleep. "One thing at a time," he whispered, and for once in his methodically planned life, he had no idea what came next. Thompson woke to unfamiliar sounds in his usually quiet house. A soft cooing filtered through the baby monitor on his nightstand, followed by rustling noises. The digital clock read 5:47 a.m. He rolled out of bed, his muscles aching from an evening spent assembling baby furniture. The guest room, now Malik's room, was just down the hall. The door creaked as he pushed it open. "Hey, little man," he said softly. Malik stood in his crib, gripping the railing. His face lit up at the sight of Thompson, tiny hands reaching up. "Couldn't sleep either, huh?" Thompson lifted him, noting the wet diaper. "Let's get you changed." The changing table, delivered just yesterday, still had price tags hanging from its side. Thompson laid Malik down, remembering Miss Carter's instructions from the day before. "Diaper off first," he muttered to himself. "Wipes ready. New diaper prepped." Malik squirmed and babbled, making the task harder than it needed to be. "Hold still, buddy. Work with me here." A knock at the front door made them both freeze. Thompson glanced at his watch. 6 a.m. "Your Honor." Barbara's voice called through the door. "It's me." Thompson finished securing the diaper. "Come in. We're upstairs." Barbara appeared in the doorway, carrying newspapers and coffee. She stopped short at the sight of her boss, still in pajamas, changing a diaper. "Don't say it," Thompson warned. "Wasn't going to," but her smile said otherwise. She held up the newspapers. "You might want to see these." Thompson picked up Malik, settling him on his hip. Another move Ms. Carter had taught him. "That bad?" "See for yourself." The headlines jumped out. Judge halts court for crying baby. Thompson's temporary guardianship raises eyebrows. Judicial conduct under scrutiny. They work fast, Thompson muttered. The phone's been ringing since dawn. Other judges, reporters, the judicial board. "What's the board saying?" Barbara hesitated. "They're calling an emergency meeting. Today." Thompson nodded, bouncing Malik gently as the baby started to fuss. "Time? 2 p.m. Give me everything you can on similar cases. Judges who've adopted, especially from their own courts. And call Ms. Carter." "Already did. She's bringing the temporary guardianship papers at 9. Barbara pulled out her phone. "Judge Martinez wants to meet before the board hearing. Judge Peterson, too. And your ex-wife called." Thompson's head snapped up. "Sarah?" She saw the news. Malik chose that moment to start crying in earnest. His tiny face scrunched up, tears rolling down his cheeks. "He's probably hungry," Barbara said. "I'll heat a bottle." "You know how?" "I have 3 kids, Your Honor. I think I can handle it." As Barbara headed downstairs, Thompson walked to the window with Malik. The morning sun was just starting to peek over the Chicago skyline. "Big day ahead, little man," he murmured. The baby's cries softened to whimpers. His small hand gripped Thompson's t-shirt. Barbara returned with a bottle. "Want me to?" "No," Thompson said quickly. "I need to learn." He settled into the rocking chair, another new addition to the room, and offered Malik the bottle. The baby latched on immediately, his eyes fixed on Thompson's face. "The board's going to fight this," Barbara said quietly. "Let them." "Richard." She rarely used his first name. "They could force you to recuse yourself from all family court cases. Maybe more." "I know. Your entire career." "Look at him, Barbara." Thompson's voice was soft but firm. "Really look at him. 20 years I've sat on that bench, making decisions about children's lives. How many have we lost to the system? How many files crossed my desk, became statistics?" Malik's eyes were starting to droop, the bottle nearly empty. "Yesterday morning, I was Judge Thompson, following protocols, maintaining order. Then this little boy started crying in my courtroom." He shifted Malik to his shoulder, patting his back like Ms. Carter had demonstrated. "Sometimes the right decision isn't in any law book." Barbara watched as Malik let out a small burp, then snuggled into Thompson's neck. "The media is going to be brutal," she warned. "They'll dig into everything. Your divorce, your personal life. Let them dig." A sharp knock at the front door interrupted them. Barbara checked her phone. "Ms. Carter." "Early." Thompson stood, still holding Malik. "Let's get this started." Downstairs, Ms. Carter spread papers across his dining room table. Her face was tired, like she'd been up all night. "The temporary guardianship papers are ready," she said. "But there's something you need to see first." She pulled out a file. "I did more digging into Malik's mother last night." Thompson sat down, adjusting Malik in his lap. The baby was fully awake now, reaching for the papers on the table. "Michelle Johnson," Ms. Carter read. 26 years old. 2 jobs, like I said. But there's more." She pulled out a photograph. She was taking night classes at community college. "Nursing program." Thompson stared at the photo. A young black woman in scrubs, smiling at the camera. Malik had her eyes. The accident happened after a double shift. She was 2 semesters away from graduating. Ms. Carter's voice caught slightly. The daycare bills were overwhelming. She couldn't afford to cut back her hours. Malik babbled, patting the photo with his small hand. She was trying, Ms. Carter continued, fighting against a system that was stacked against her. Single mom, working class, person of color. She met Thompson's eyes. The same system you're part of was part of, Thompson corrected quietly. Another knock at the door. Barbara went to answer it. That'll be the press again, Ms. Carter said. They're camped outside your house. Let them camp. Barbara returned, her face tense. Judge Martinez is here. And Sarah. Thompson's stomach tightened. He hadn't seen his ex-wife in over a year. Sarah walked in, stopping short at the sight of Malik. She looked exactly as Thompson remembered. Perfectly put together, even at 6:30 a.m. Richard, she said softly. Sarah. Malik twisted in his lap, studying the newcomer with curious eyes. So it's true, Sarah said. You're really doing this? Yes. She moved closer, her expensive perfume filling the air. The Richard Thompson I knew would never make such an impulsive decision. Maybe you didn't know me as well as you thought. Malik reached for Sarah's shiny necklace. She stepped back. The board meeting, she said. They called me. They're going to ask about our marriage. The real reason we divorced. Thompson met her gaze steadily. Tell them the truth. All of it. It'll hurt your chances. Then it hurts them. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Then her eyes shifted to Malik, who was now contentedly chewing on Thompson's tie. You really want this? More than I've wanted anything in a very long time. She nodded once, then turned to leave. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, she said quietly, you'll make a good father. Then she was gone. Judge Martinez entered next, his face grave. Richard, we need to talk. Thompson looked around the room. His dining room, usually so orderly, was covered in papers. Baby bottles sat next to legal briefs. A stuffed elephant lay on top of court documents. Malik yawned, his head dropping against Thompson's chest. Yes, Thompson said, we do. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the chaos his life had become in less than 24 hours. Outside, reporters waited. The judicial board was gathering. His career hung in the balance. But as Malik's small hand curled around his finger, Thompson felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Absolute certainty. Whatever came next, he was ready. The judicial boardroom felt colder than Thompson remembered. 7 pairs of eyes watched him from behind the curved mahogany table. Malik slept soundly in the baby carrier strapped to his chest, the only sound in the otherwise silent room. Chief Judge Morrison cleared his throat. Judge Thompson, do you understand why you're here? I do. Thompson's voice was steady, his hand resting protectively on Malik's back. You violated multiple protocols, Morrison continued. Interrupted court proceedings. Initiated physical contact with a child in your custody case. Filed for temporary guardianship without proper distance. With respect, Thompson interrupted. There's no law against what I did. Judge Hawthorne, a stern woman in her 60s, leaned forward. There's no precedent for it either. A sitting judge adopting from his own court? Actually, Thompson pulled out a file Barbara had prepared. There are 3 cases in Illinois alone. Judge Marshall in 1998, Judge Rodriguez in 2005. Those were different circumstances. Morrison cut in. How? Thompson challenged. Because they were married? Because the children were older? Or because they didn't look like Malik? A tense silence fell over the room. Malik stirred slightly, making soft, sleeping noises. Watch yourself, Richard, Morrison warned. No. Thompson stood carefully, supporting Malik's head. You watch yourselves. We sit here every day, making decisions about children's lives. We hide behind protocols and precedents while kids get lost in the system. That's not Michelle Johnson, Thompson continued. 26 years old. Working 2 jobs, taking night classes, trying to give her son a better life. She fell asleep at the wheel after a double shift because she couldn't afford childcare. That's the system we're part of. Malik woke with a small whimper. Thompson instinctively started the gentle bouncing motion, he'd learned worked best. Judge Hawthorne's expression softened slightly. No one's questioning your intentions, Richard. But your position requires objectivity. Does it? Thompson looked each board member in the eye. Or does it require humanity? The door opened, and Ms. Carter walked in, carrying a thick folder. Thompson hadn't asked her to come. Your Honors, she addressed the board. I have something you need to see. Morrison frowned. This is a closed meeting. These are the statistics for child placement in Cook County. Ms. Carter continued, passing out papers. Specifically for African American infants under 2 years old. Pay attention to page 3. Thompson watched as the judges flipped through the documents. He saw the moment they reached the relevant page. Their expression said everything. 47%, Ms. Carter said clearly. That's how many remain in the system until aging out. For babies like Malik, the odds of adoption decrease by 12% every month they stay in foster care. Malik began to fuss in earnest now. Thompson reached for the diaper bag, but Ms. Carter was already preparing a bottle. You've done your homework, he said quietly. She gave him a small smile. So have you? The board watched in silence as Thompson fed Malik, his movements still slightly awkward, but growing more confident. How long have you had him? Judge Ramirez asked softly. 2 days, Thompson answered. Feels like forever and no time at all. The media is having a field day, Morrison noted. Your ex-wife gave a statement supporting my petition, Thompson finished. Check your emails. More silence. Malik finished his bottle, and Thompson shifted him to his shoulder for burping, no longer self-conscious about the act. You understand what you're risking? Morrison asked. Your career, your reputation. A loud burp from Malik interrupted him. Several judges tried to hide their smiles. I understand exactly what I'm risking, Thompson said. And what I'm gaining. Ms. Carter stepped forward again. The home study is scheduled for next week. All preliminary paperwork is in order. Judge Thompson has already enrolled in parenting classes and childcare courses. At 6 a.m., Thompson added. Before court. And who's watching Malik during court hours? Hawthorne asked. I am. Barbara's voice came from the doorway. She entered carrying more files, along with a licensed daycare provider we've hired. My office has been temporarily converted. Morrison rubbed his temples. You've thought of everything. No, Thompson admitted. I'm figuring it out as I go. But isn't that what parenting is? Judge Ramirez, a father of 4, nodded slightly. We'll need to discuss this privately, Morrison said. And there will need to be restrictions. Cases reassigned, certain types of hearings. I understand. You'll be under scrutiny. Every decision questioned. Every move watched. Like Malik will be? Thompson asked quietly. Every move watched. Every action questioned. Just because of who he is and what he looks like. The room fell silent again. Give us the room, Morrison finally said. We'll have our decision in an hour. Thompson gathered the diaper bag, adjusting Malik in his carrier. At the door, he turned back. You know what the real precedent would be? He asked. Not a judge adopting from his court, but this system finally putting children's needs above protocol. In the hallway, Barbara and Ms. Carter waited. Beyond them, Thompson could see reporters gathered at the courthouse steps. That was quite a speech, Barbara said. Think it worked? Ms. Carter checked her phone. Sarah's statement is going viral. Public opinion is shifting. Malik grabbed Thompson's tie, his new favorite toy, and began chewing on it. Another tie ruined, Barbara noted. Small price to pay. Thompson looked at his watch. We have an hour. Anyone hungry? They found a quiet corner in the courthouse cafeteria. Thompson had learned to eat one-handed, the other always supporting Malik. The board's going to set conditions, Ms. Carter said. Let them. Your caseload will be cut. Good? More time for this little man. Malik babbled in agreement, reaching for Thompson's sandwich. Not yet, buddy, Thompson chuckled. Few more months before solid food. Barbara watched them with a knowing smile. You've been studying? Every night. Did you know babies his age should be saying 1 to 3 words? He's right on schedule with duh and BA. Duh, Malik echoed, as if on cue. Ms. Carter raised an eyebrow. You've changed, Your Honor. Richard, he corrected automatically. Richard, she amended. 4 days ago, you were the most rigid, protocol-obsessed judge on the bench. 4 days ago, I was a different person. His phone buzzed. A message from Morrison. Decision ready. Thompson stood, securing Malik in his carrier. The baby snuggled against his chest, apparently ready for another nap. Whatever they decide, he said, we keep fighting. Barbara gathered their things. You've both gone above and beyond. We're in this with you, Ms. Carter interrupted. All the way? They walked back to the boardroom together. Reporters called out questions, cameras flashed. Thompson shielded Malik's face instinctively. At the door, he paused. Through the wood, he could hear the board members talking. Ready? Barbara asked. Thompson looked down at Malik, peacefully sleeping against his chest. The past 4 days flashed through his mind. The first cry in his courtroom, the rushed preparations, the sleepless nights learning to be a father. You know what's funny? He said softly. I thought I was saving him, but he's the one saving me. Ms. Carter squeezed his arm. Let's go hear what they decided. Thompson squared his shoulders and opened the door. Whatever came next, he and Malik would face it together. The board members sat exactly as they had before, but something had changed in their expressions. Morrison spoke first. We've reached a decision. Thompson held his breath, his hand automatically moving to Malik's back. The future of 2 lives hung on the next words. Family court only. Morrison's words echoed in Thompson's head as he paced his living room at 3 a.m. No criminal cases. No civil litigation. Reduced hours. Malik's cries pierced the night for the 3rd time since midnight. Thompson headed upstairs, his body moving on autopilot after a week of sleepless nights. I'm coming, buddy, he called softly. The nursery door creaked open. Malik stood in his crib, tears streaming down his face, arms reaching up. Bad dream? Thompson lifted him, feeling the wet diaper. No wonder you're upset. As he changed Malik on the dresser turn-changing table, his phone buzzed. A text from Ms. Carter. Home study tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't forget. Like I could forget, he muttered. Malik grabbed his fingers, squeezing tight. In just a week, these middle-of-the-night moments had become their special time. The world outside fell away, leaving just the two of them. Your social worker's coming tomorrow, Thompson explained, securing the fresh diaper. She's going to check if I'm doing this right. Duh. Malik responded, his earlier tears forgotten. Yeah, that's right. Da's trying his best. The doorbell rang, startling them both. Thompson checked his watch. 3:27 a.m. Now what? He lifted Malik, heading downstairs. Through the peephole, he saw Barbara, holding files and looking frazzled. Sorry, she said when he opened the door. Emergency case. Judge Martinez needs your input. It's 3 a.m. Custody dispute turned violent. Father's threatening to flee the country with the kids. Thompson sighed, letting her in. Malik reached for Barbara immediately. She'd become his favorite visitor. Want me to take him? She offered. No, he just got changed. Kitchen? They settled at the kitchen table, files spread out between coffee cups. Malik dozed against Thompson's chest while they worked. Martinez thinks the father's claims about abuse are credible, Barbara explained. But removing the children, where are they now? Police protective custody. Father's in holding. Thompson rubbed his eyes. Even with his reduced caseload, the hard cases still found him. Give me Martinez on the phone. While Barbara dialed, Thompson studied the case file one-handed, his other arm secure around Malik. The sleeping baby drooled on his t-shirt. Richard? Martinez's tired voice came through the speaker. Sorry to do this to you. Walk me through it. They spent the next hour discussing options, legal precedents, emergency orders. Malik slept through it all, his warm weight anchoring Thompson to the present. Finally, Martinez had his answer. As Barbara packed up the files, she studied Thompson. When's the last time you slept more than 3 hours straight? What day is it? That's what I thought. She reached for Malik. Go get some rest. I'll take him for a bit. The home study is 6 hours away. You need sleep. Thompson hesitated. Letting others help was still new to him. Richard, Barbara said softly, you can't do everything alone. That's what they'll be looking for today. He knew she was right. The social worker would want to see his support system, his ability to balance work and parenting. 2 hours, he conceded, carefully transferring Malik to Barbara's arms. The baby stirred but didn't wake. 4 hours, she countered. I'll wake you in time to prepare. Upstairs in his bed, Thompson closed his eyes. His thoughts drifted to the board's conditions. Family court only, reduced hours, monthly reviews. A compromise, Morrison had called it. The sound of Barbara softly singing to Malik floated up the stairs. Thompson smiled, remembering the first time she'd brought her children to meet him. "Uncle Richard," they'd shouted, turning his ordered life upside down for an afternoon. Now here he was, his house filled with baby things, his schedule revolving around feedings and nap times. Sleep came quickly. The next thing he knew, Barbara was shaking him awake. "It's 7:30, she said. "Miss Carter just called. The social worker's coming early." Thompson bolted upright. "How early?" "She's on her way now." He rushed through a shower, throwing on a clean shirt and pants. Downstairs, he found Barbara had already straightened up, started coffee, and dressed Malik in one of his new outfits. "You're a lifesaver," he told her. "I know." She handed him coffee. "Drink. You'll need it." The doorbell rang at 8:15. Miss Carter stood with a severe-looking woman in her 50s. "Judge Thompson," Miss Carter said formally, "this is Mrs. Reynolds from Child Services." Mrs. Reynolds surveyed the house immediately, her eyes noting every detail. "You live alone?" she asked, though Thompson knew she'd read his file. "Yes. Work hours? 9 to 5 now. Reduced caseload." She made notes on her tablet. "Childcare arrangements? Licensed provider in my chambers during court hours. Barbara, my clerk, as backup. And I've arranged flexible court schedules around Malik's needs." Mrs. Reynolds walked through the house, inspecting everything. Electrical outlets, window locks, cabinet latches. "These safety measures are new," she observed. "All installed last week." "Professional service?" She reached the nursery, taking in the carefully prepared room. "Expensive furnishings." "Safe furnishings," Thompson corrected. "I researched every piece." Malik chose that moment to fuss. Thompson reached for him automatically, but Mrs. Reynolds watched his movements critically. "How many bottles yesterday?" 6. 4 ounces each, except the evening feeding. He took 5 ounces then. Her eyebrows rose slightly. "I keep logs," Thompson explained, pulling out his phone. "Feedings, diapers, sleep patterns. There's an app." Mrs. Reynolds spent the next hour grilling him on everything from emergency contacts to pediatrician plans. Thompson answered each question directly, holding Malik as the baby played with his tie. Finally, she sat at the kitchen table, reviewing her notes. "Your commitment seems genuine," she said. "But I have concerns." Thompson waited. "You're a single man with no parenting experience. Your job, despite the reduced hours, is demanding. The media attention puts additional stress on the situation." "Valid points," Thompson agreed. "Now let me show you something." He led her to his home office. One wall was covered in photos, Barbara's kids, colleagues, families, court staff gatherings. "My support system," he explained. "Every person in these photos has offered help. Barbara's teaching me childcare basics. Her kids already call Malik their cousin. Judge Martinez's wife leads a single parents group on joining." Mrs. Reynolds studied the photos. "The media attention," she asked, "is dying down. But more importantly, it's starting conversations. About adoption barriers. About single-parent stigma. About race in the system." Malik reached for Mrs. Reynolds suddenly, surprising them both. "May I?" she asked. Thompson transferred him carefully. Malik studied her face, then gave her his signature smile, the one that melted everyone's hearts. He declared, reaching back for Thompson. Mrs. Reynolds handed him back, her expression softening slightly. "You understand this isn't just about now," she said. "This is forever. School meetings, doctor appointments, sleepless nights, basketball games," Thompson added. "Birthday parties, college tours." "I know." She made one final note on her tablet. "The next review is in 2 weeks. We'll need updated medical records, proof of your parenting class's completion," and a crash from the kitchen interrupted her. They rushed in to find Barbara cleaning up a broken bottle, apologizing profusely. "It's fine," Thompson said, already reaching for the broom. "Malik, want to show Mrs. Reynolds your new trick?" He set the baby in his high chair, where Malik immediately began his newest accomplishment, clapping. Mrs. Reynolds watched the scene, Thompson cleaning while talking to Malik, Barbara preparing a new bottle, Miss Carter checking the day's schedule on her phone. A family, unconventional but unmistakable. 2 weeks, she repeated, gathering her things. Don't miss any classes. After she left, Thompson collapsed into a chair, Malik secure in his lap. That went better than expected, Miss Carter said. Did it? She smiled when Malik clapped. That's practically a standing ovation from Mrs. Reynolds. Barbara brought fresh coffee. 1 hurdle down, 1,000,000 to go, Thompson sighed. Malik patted his face, demanding attention. Thompson smiled, exhausted but content. Worth it, though, he said softly. Every single one. The emergency room's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Malik's tiny face. Thompson paced the pediatric waiting area, his heart pounding as he watched his son struggle to breathe. The fever spiked so fast, he explained to the nurse for the 3rd time. He was fine at dinner. Then suddenly, the doctor will be right with you, she assured him. Malik whimpered in his arms, his skin burning hot against Thompson's chest. The clock showed 2:17 a.m. Duh, Malik coughed weakly. I'm here, buddy. Right here. His phone buzzed. Barbara. How is he? She asked immediately. Still waiting. His breathing's getting worse. I'm on my way. Barbara, you don't have to. Court starts in 6 hours. You have the Williams case? The Williams case. Thompson had forgotten completely. A complex custody battle involving 3 children and allegations of abuse. The kind of case that required his full attention. I'll call Martinez, he started. Already did. He can't cover. It's a continuation hearing. Has to be you. Malik's cough worsened, his small body shaking with each breath. Figure it out later, Thompson said, hanging up as a doctor approached. Mr. Thompson? The young doctor looked at his chart. I'm Dr. Chun. Let's take a look at Malik. The examination room was cold. Malik cried as they took his temperature, 103.4. Respiratory infection, Dr. Chun diagnosed. Common in infants, but his oxygen levels are concerning. We'll need to admit him. Thompson's world narrowed to a single point. How long? At least 48 hours. We need to monitor him and start 4 antibiotics. A nurse came to place the 4. Malik's screams echoed off the sterile walls as Thompson held him still, feeling like the worst father in the world. Duh. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so sorry. Barbara arrived as they were settling into a hospital room. She took one look at Thompson's face and pulled out her phone. I'll handle court, she said. You stay here. The Williams case can wait. No, Thompson said firmly. It can't. Those kids need a decision. Malik had finally fallen into a restless sleep, the 4 dripping steadily. He needs you more, Barbara argued. They all need me. Thompson rubbed his face. What time is it? Almost 4. Give me my files. I'll review them here. Richard. Please, Barbara. She left and returned an hour later with his briefcase and a change of clothes. Thompson read case files by the dim light of Malik's hospital room, one hand always touching his son. The sun was rising when Miss Carter arrived. Heard what happened, she said, setting down coffee. How is he? Fever's down a little. Doctor's optimistic. She studied the files spread across his lap. You're still doing the hearing? Video conference from here. Barbara's setting it up. The board won't like that. The board can. Thompson caught himself, glancing at Malik. The board will understand. Ms. Carter sat in the other chair. You're trying to prove you can do it all. I have to. No, you don't. She leaned forward. You're not just a judge anymore, Richard. You're a father. I'm both, he insisted. I have to be both? Malik stirred, coughing. Thompson was there instantly, lifting him gently to ease his breathing. Sure, buddy. Does got you. Miss Carter watched them. The hearing's at 9? 8:30 prep with the attorneys. You'll stay with him? Of course. Thompson changed in the small bathroom, putting on his suit while listening to Malik's labored breathing through the door. His tie was crooked. It didn't matter. Barbara arrived with his laptop at 8. They set up a makeshift court in the corner of the hospital room. Attorneys are ready, she reported. But Richard, you look exhausted. I'm fine. The Williams case appeared on his screen. 4 anxious faces looked back at him. 2 parents, 2 attorneys. Your Honor, one began, we appreciate you accommodating. A loud beeping from Malik's monitors cut through the room. Dr. Chen rushed in. His oxygen's dropping, she announced. We need to start breathing treatments. Thompson's heart stopped. The case participants watched on screen as he rushed to Malik's bed. Court is in recess, Barbara announced quickly, closing the laptop. The next hour was a blur. Breathing masks, medication, Malik's terrified cries. Thompson held him through it all. Lawsuit forgotten. Finally, Malik's breathing stabilized. Dr. Chen adjusted his oxygen. He's fighting hard, she said, but he's going to be okay. Thompson nodded, not trusting his voice. Barbara touched his shoulder. The Williams family is still waiting. He looked at his son, small and vulnerable in the hospital bed. Then at the laptop, where 3 children's futures waited on his decision. Give me 5 minutes. He splashed water on his face, straightened his tie. Miss Carter took his place by Malik's bed. The video conference resumed. Thompson looked directly into the camera. Before we continue, he said, I owe you an explanation. My son is in the hospital. Silence on the screen. I could have postponed this hearing. Maybe I should have. But your children deserve resolution, and I made a commitment to them. To all the children in my court. Mrs. Williams spoke softly. Is your little boy okay? He will be. Thompson's voice caught slightly. Just like your children will be once we figure this out. So let's focus. Tell me about last Tuesday's visitation. They worked through the case methodically. Thompson listened, asked questions, took notes. Every few minutes, his eyes darted to Malik's bed. 2 hours later, he delivered his ruling. Joint custody, supervised visits, mandatory counseling. The Williams family cried with relief. Thank you, Your Honor, Mr. Williams said. And I hope your son feels better. The screen went dark. Thompson loosened his tie and returned to Malik's side. Duh, Malik mumbled through his oxygen mask. Right here, buddy. Not going anywhere. Miss Carter handed him a paper. From the board. Thompson read it, then read it again. They're offering a compromise, he said. Part-time status. 3 days a week in court. 2 days remote work. Full benefits maintained. That's unexpected. There's a note from Morrison. Thompson read aloud. Saw the Williams hearing. Sometimes the hardest choices show us what matters most. Malik's small hand found his finger, squeezing tight. What are you thinking? Miss Carter asked. Thompson looked at his son, then at the paper that would change both their lives. I'm thinking, he said slowly, that maybe we can have both. Not perfectly, not easily, but maybe... Duh! Malik interrupted, trying to sit up. Thompson caught him, adjusting the oxygen mask. Easy, buddy. We got time? And for the first time since this journey began, he truly believed it. Time to be a judge. Time to be a father. Time to figure out how to be both. Miss Carter, he said, not taking his eyes off Malik. Give me the paperwork. For the part-time status? She smiled. Already did? Outside the hospital window, Chicago was waking up. Another day of cases, decisions, and responsibilities waited. But right here, in this room, Thompson had already made the most important decision of his life. And he'd make it again every single day. The adoption hearing room looked different from this side of the bench. Thompson sat in the witness chair, Malik bouncing on his lap, while Judge Martinez reviewed their file. 3 months, Martinez noted. Quite a journey. Thompson nodded, adjusting Malik's bow tie. A gift from Barbara for the occasion. The baby had recovered fully from his hospital stay, now healthy and active as ever. Duh! Malik reached for Martinez's gavel. Not yet, buddy, Thompson chuckled. Maybe in about 30 years. The courtroom was packed. Barbara sat in the front row with her children. Miss Carter stood near the door. Even Mrs. Reynolds, the stern social worker, had shown up. For the record, Martinez began formally. This is the final adoption hearing for case number 2025 AD 0472 in the matter of Malik Johnson Thompson. Thompson's heart jumped at the name. They'd filed the paperwork last week, but hearing it officially, Judge Thompson, Martinez continued, please state your current employment status. Part-time family court judge, 3 days per week in court, 2 days remote work. And your support system for childcare? Thompson gestured to the crowd. It takes a village, Your Honor. And I've found mine. Barbara's kids waved at Malik, who clapped in response. The gallery chuckled. "Miss Carter," Martinez called. "Your final recommendation?" She stepped forward. "Child Services fully supports this adoption, Your Honor. Judge Thompson has exceeded every requirement. His home is safe and nurturing. His commitment to Malik's well-being is unwavering. Most importantly, the bond between them is extraordinary." As if to prove her point, Malik turned in Thompson's lap, patting his face. "Go up." Thompson lifted him slightly, and Malik beamed at the crowd. "Mrs. Reynolds," Martinez continued, "your assessment?" The social worker stood. "When I first evaluated this placement, I had serious doubts. A single man, no parenting experience, demanding career." She paused. "I've never been happier to be proven wrong." Thompson blinked in surprise. Mrs. Reynolds smiled. Actually smiled. "In 3 months, I've watched Judge Thompson reorganize his entire life around Malik's needs. He's attended every parenting class, joined support groups, created a robust childcare network. But more than that," she looked directly at Thompson, "I've watched him become a father." Malik chose that moment to grab Thompson's tie, still his favorite activity. "The court has reviewed all documentation," Martinez said. "Home studies, medical records, financial statements, character references." He looked up, "including quite a compelling letter from your ex-wife." Thompson hadn't known Sarah wrote a letter. "Would you like to make a statement, Richard?" Thompson stood, holding Malik securely. He'd prepared a speech, but looking at his son's face, different words came. "3 months ago, a baby cried in my courtroom," he began. "I was annoyed at first, disrupting proceedings, breaking protocol." He smiled at the memory. "But that cry, it woke something in me, something I thought I'd lost." Malik played with his tie, completely unaware of the magnitude of the moment. "I've spent 20 years making decisions about families, trying to do what's best for children. But I never truly understood until Malik." Thompson's voice caught. "Until those first sleepless nights. Until the first fever. Until he looked at me and said like I was his whole world." Barbara wiped her eyes. Several gallery members sniffled. People asked if it was hard, giving up full-time court work, trading legal briefs for bedtime stories. But here's the truth. Every sacrifice has been a gift. Every challenge a blessing. Because they brought me here, to this moment, with this amazing little boy who rewrote everything I thought I knew about family. Malik sensed the emotion in his voice and patted his cheek. "The sad?" "No, buddy," Thompson whispered. "Da's happy. So happy." Martinez cleared his throat. "Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, this court finds that the adoption of Malik Johnson Thompson by Richard James Thompson is in the best interest of the child. The adoption is hereby finalized." The gavel struck. The gallery erupted in applause. "Duh!" Malik clapped too, though he didn't know why. Thompson hugged him close, breathing in his baby shampoo smell, feeling his solid weight, the weight that had anchored him through every doubt and challenge. Barbara rushed forward with her kids. "Congratulations, Uncle Richard," her youngest shouted. "Is Malik officially our cousin now?" "You bet he is." Ms. Carter approached with papers. "Just need your signature." One last time, Thompson signed, his vision blurring slightly. Malik's small hand covered his on the pen. "Hold on," Barbara said. "Where's the chief judge?" "Morrison couldn't make it," Thompson replied. "Actually," a voice came from the door, "I wouldn't miss this." Chief Judge Morrison entered, carrying a large gift bag. "Your Honor," Thompson started. "Richard," Morrison corrected, reaching for Malik. "May I hold my newest grandson?" The room fell silent. Morrison had never mentioned having grandchildren. "Not by blood," he explained, taking Malik expertly. "But family isn't always blood, is it? Sometimes it's a cry in a courtroom. Sometimes it's a choice." Malik studied Morrison's face, then reached for his beard. "Strong grip," Morrison laughed. "Future judge material." "That's what I keep saying," Barbara called out. Morrison handed Malik back to Thompson. "The gift is from the entire board. Open it later." Thompson nodded, too moved to speak. "Court's adjourned," Martinez announced. "Time to celebrate." They moved to the courthouse steps for photos. Malik, overwhelmed by the attention, buried his face in Thompson's neck. "Too much, buddy." Thompson rubbed his back. "To home?" "Yeah, we can go home soon." "Our home?" Barbara's kids crowded around for pictures. Ms. Carter directed everyone into position. Mrs. Reynolds even joined in, standing next to Morrison. "Smile, everyone," the photographer called. But Thompson wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at Malik, who had lifted his head and was reaching for his tie again. This moment, this perfectly ordinary, extraordinarily meaningful moment, was everything. "Duh!" Malik tugged the tie. "Yeah, buddy. Love to." The world stopped. 3 months of duh and BA and baby babble, and now Thompson hugged him closer, not caring about the tears on his cheeks. "Love you too, son," he whispered. "Forever and always." The camera clicked, capturing the moment. A judge and his son, surrounded by their chosen family, rewriting destiny one day at a time. Later, at home, Thompson opened Morrison's gift. Inside was a custom-made judge's gavel, sized for tiny hands. The inscription read, "For Malik Thompson, future judge of the people's heart's love, your court family." Thompson placed it carefully on Malik's bookshelf, next to the stuffed elephant from that first night. "Big dreams for you, buddy," he said softly. Malik, playing with blocks on his playmat, looked up and smiled. That pure, perfect smile that had changed everything. "To play?" Thompson sat on the floor, straightening his tie out of Malik's reach. "Always, son. Always." 1 week after the adoption, Thompson stood in his kitchen at 6 a.m., attempting to make heart-shaped pancakes while Malik watched from his high chair. "Da mess." Malik pointed at the batter dripping onto the floor. "Yeah, buddy. Da's definitely making a mess." Thompson flipped another misshapen pancake. "But it's a special day, right?" "Part day." "That's right. First day at the new playground." The playground had been Morrison's idea. A small park near the courthouse, recently renovated to be more inclusive. Today was the grand opening, and Morrison had insisted Thompson and Malik be there. "More," Malik demanded as Thompson placed a vaguely heart-shaped pancake on his plate. "Small bites, remember?" Thompson cut the pancake into tiny pieces. "Don't want to get your new outfit dirty." The outfit, a tiny button-down shirt and khakis, had been Barbara's contribution. "He needs to look sharp for his first public appearance," she'd insisted. The doorbell rang just as Thompson was cleaning syrup off Malik's face. "Coming," he called. Miss Carter stood on the porch, holding coffee and a newspaper. "You're early," Thompson said, letting her in. "Thought you might want to see this." She handed him the paper. The headline read, "From Judge's Bench to Jungle Gym. Local Park Gets Inclusive Makeover." Below was a photo of Thompson and Malik from the adoption day, alongside plans for the new playground. "Morrison's been busy," Thompson noted. "Duh, duh," Malik called from the kitchen. "More." They found him covered in syrup despite Thompson's best efforts. "Someone needs a wardrobe change," Miss Carter laughed. "Third outfit of the morning," Thompson sighed. "I don't know how he does it." "Up!" Malik reached for Ms. Carter, who scooped him up expertly. "I'll handle the cleanup. You get his clothes?" Upstairs, Thompson opened Malik's dresser, organized now, after Mrs. Reynolds' detailed instructions. As he pulled out a fresh outfit, his phone buzzed. "Richard?" Sarah's voice was tentative. "Is this a bad time?" "Sarah?" "No, just getting ready for the park opening. I saw the paper." She paused. "Mind if I stop by?" Thompson hesitated. They hadn't spoken since her letter to the adoption board. "Duh." Malik's voice carried up the stairs. "To come? Bring him down." Miss Carter called. "Sarah, I need to." "Go," she said. "I'll see you at the park." Thompson headed downstairs, fresh clothes in hand, mind spinning. Sarah at the park opening? What was Morrison planning? "Someone's excited," Miss Carter observed as Malik bounced in his high chair. "Park! Park!" The cleanup and clothes-changing operation took both adults' full attention. By the time they got Malik ready, it was nearly time to leave. "Barbara's meeting us there?" Thompson asked, strapping Malik into his car seat. "Along with half the courthouse, from what I hear." Miss Carter checked her phone. "Morrison's gone all out. Press, community leaders, even the mayor might show up." Thompson groaned. "I thought this was just a small ceremony." "Nothing small when it comes to you two anymore." She smiled. "Face it, Richard. You're symbols now. We're just A judge who chose love over protocol? A single man fighting stereotypes to adopt across racial lines? A father and son redefining family in the public eye? She raised an eyebrow. Like it or not, your story matters to people. Malik babbled happily in the back seat, oblivious to the conversation. The park was packed when they arrived. Television vans lined the street. A crowd had gathered around the ribbon blocking the new playground. "Oh boy," Thompson muttered. Barbara rushed over as they parked. "Finally, Morrison's looking for you." "The park." Malik pointed at the colorful equipment. Thompson lifted him out of the car seat. "Soon, buddy. We have to do the boring grown-up stuff first." Morrison waited near the podium, beaming. "There's my favorite future judge." "Chief," Thompson started. "When you said ceremony." "Richard," Morrison interrupted. "For once in your life, let someone else handle the proceedings." He turned to the crowd. "Places, everyone?" The next hour passed in a blur. Speeches about community, inclusion, and progress. Photos with local officials. Malik, surprisingly patient, watched it all from Thompson's arms. Then Morrison took the microphone. 3 months ago, he began, a baby cried in courtroom 302. That cry did more than disrupt proceedings. It disrupted our assumptions about family, about justice, about what really matters in our system. Thompson held Malik closer. "Today, we're not just opening a playground. We're opening minds. This park, designed to welcome all children, all families, stands as a symbol of what Judge Thompson and Malik have taught us. That love knows no boundaries. That family is what we choose to make it." Malik, getting restless, reached for Thompson's tie. "No, buddy," Thompson whispered. "This is the good tie. Want down?" Morrison smiled. "And on that note, I think it's time to let our guest of honor test out the equipment. Malik Thompson, would you do the honors?" He held out a small pair of scissors, wrapped in ribbon. Thompson carried Malik to the ribbon. "Want to help to cut it?" "The cut." Together, they snipped the ribbon. The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed. "Go play?" Malik asked hopefully. "Go play," Thompson agreed. He set Malik down, watching as his son toddled toward the playground. Barbara's kids immediately surrounded him, showing him the slide. "He's amazing." Thompson turned. Sarah stood beside him, watching Malik play. "Sarah, I meant what I wrote," she said quietly. "In the letter. About you being the best father that little boy could ask for. Thank you. For everything." She nodded, then smiled as Malik waved from the top of the slide. "To watch." "I'm watching, buddy." The slide seemed impossibly tall from Thompson's perspective, but Malik showed no fear. He pushed off, squealing with delight as he zoomed down. Again. Thompson spent the next hour following Malik around the playground, helping him on equipment, watching him make friends. The media gradually dispersed. The officials left. Soon it was just families enjoying a sunny morning. Judge Thompson, he turned to find a young black woman holding a toddler. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said. Your story, it gave me hope. For my brother. He's single, wanting to adopt." Thompson looked at Malik, now sharing toys with her child. "Give me your brother's number," he said. "I know some people he should talk to." More parents approached throughout the morning. Single dads, mixed-race families, people seeking advice, sharing stories, finding connection. "Told you," Miss Carter said, appearing with coffee. "Symbols." Malik ran over, tired but happy. "Go up." Thompson lifted him, feeling the familiar weight, the perfect fit of his son in his arms. "Good day, buddy." "Good day." Malik yawned. "Home now? Home now." As they walked to the car, Morrison called out, "Richard, Chief. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Don't be late. New cases." Morrison smiled. "Something better. We're starting a program. 4 single parents wanting to adopt. Need a judge to oversee it." Thompson looked at Malik, already dozing on his shoulder. "Count me in." At home, Thompson laid Malik in his bed for a nap. The boy clutched his stuffed elephant, thumb in his mouth. "Loved ya," he mumbled sleepily. "Love you too, son." In the hallway, Thompson looked at the photos now covering his walls. No longer just other people's families. Now his own memories. His own story. His phone buzzed with a text from Barbara. "Check your email. Applications already coming in for the program." Thompson smiled. One cry in a courtroom. One choice to break protocol. One love that changed everything. And now, maybe, a chance to help others find their own new beginnings. 1 month after the park opening, Thompson sat in courtroom 302, watching another baby cry. The scene was eerily familiar, right down to the nervous social worker trying to quiet the child. But this time, Thompson smiled. "Miss Carter," he called gently. "Bring her here." The social worker approached with the crying infant. In the gallery, a single man in his 30s watched anxiously. "Your Honor," the state's attorney began, "about the protocols." "I'm well aware of the protocols," Thompson interrupted, taking the baby girl. "I'm also aware that Mr. Jackson has completed all required courses, passed his home study, and demonstrated exceptional commitment to becoming a father." The baby's cries softened as Thompson adjusted her in his arms, a motion that came naturally now. "The good," a familiar voice called from the back. Thompson looked up to see Barbara entering with Malik, right on schedule for their lunch break. "Order," Thompson said, but he was smiling. Mr. Jackson approached the bench. The man stood, his hands shaking slightly. "Sir," he said, "I know I'm not the typical adoptive parent. Single man working full-time, stop right there." Thompson gestured to Malik, now trying to climb onto Barbara's lap. "See that little boy?" "Yes, Your Honor. 6 months ago, he cried in this very courtroom. Changed my whole life." Thompson looked down at the baby girl, now calm in his arms. Sometimes the most important decisions we make aren't in law books. Sometimes they're written in tears and midnight feedings and first steps. Malik had wiggled free from Barbara and was toddling toward the bench. "Duh up." "Not now, buddy. Da's working." Thompson turned back to Mr. Jackson. "Tell me why you want to be a father." "Because," Jackson's voice caught, "because every child deserves someone who will move heaven and earth for them. Someone who will read the same story 50 times, kiss every hurt, celebrate every victory." He straightened. "I might not be perfect, but I'll love her with everything I have." The baby reached for Jackson, and Thompson saw it. That same instant connection he'd felt with Malik. "Ms. Carter," he called, "the papers, please." She brought forward the adoption documents already prepared. "By the power vested in me," Thompson began, then paused as Malik finally reached his chair. "Duh up," Malik insisted. Thompson looked at the gallery, then at the baby girl, then at his son. "Come here, buddy." He helped Malik onto his lap. "Want to help to make a family?" Malik beamed at Jackson and the baby. "New friend?" "That's right." Thompson handed him the gavel. "Want to make it official?" With Thompson's help, Malik brought the gavel down. "By the power vested in me," Thompson continued, "and with the assistance of my distinguished colleague," Malik giggled, "I hereby approve this adoption." "Congratulations, Mr. Jackson. You're a father." The gallery erupted in applause. Miss Carter wiped her eyes. Barbara took photos. "Thank you," Jackson whispered, taking his daughter. "Thank you so much." "The good job," Malik declared. "No, buddy." Thompson hugged him close. "We did a good job." Later that afternoon, Thompson sat in his chambers, watching Malik play with his toy gavel. The wall behind his desk, once covered in legal certificates, now held drawings, photos, and Malik's first attempt at writing DA. A knock at the door preceded Morrison's entrance. "Busy day," the chief judge noted. "5th adoption this month," Thompson replied. "The program's growing faster than we expected." "M.O." Malik ran to Morrison, who scooped him up. "Getting bigger every day," Morrison observed. "Ready for the party tomorrow?" Parties." Malik clapped. They were celebrating 6 months since the adoption. 6 months that felt like a lifetime and a blink. "The mayor's coming," Morrison said. "Wants to expand the program citywide." Thompson nodded, watching Malik show Morrison his newest toy. "You ever regret it?" Morrison asked quietly. "Choosing this path?" Before Thompson could answer, Barbara burst in. "Emergency case," she announced. "Single mother, 3 kids, father threatening to work now." Malik asked, suddenly serious. Thompson lifted him. "Yeah, buddy. It needs to work. Want to help?" Malik nodded solemnly, already reaching for Thompson's tie. "That's my answer, Chief," Thompson said to Morrison. "Every single day, This little boy shows me why I made the right choice. The emergency case took hours. Malik stayed quiet through most of it, coloring at his small desk in the corner. Another addition to Thompson's chambers. By the time they got home, the sun was setting. Thompson ordered pizza, their Friday night tradition. Part tomorrow? Malik asked as Thompson cut his pizza into small pieces. That's right. All our friends will be there. Bara, Cart, M.O. Barbara, Miss Carter, and Morrison, Thompson corrected, smiling. And lots more? Sarah, too. Thompson paused. His ex-wife had become a regular visitor, often bringing books for Malik. Yes, Sarah, too. After dinner, during their bedtime routine, Malik asked for his favorite story, the one about a baby who cried in court. Again, Thompson teased, but he was already reaching for the book they'd made together, filled with photos and simple words. Again, Malik snuggled into his lap. Once upon a time, Thompson began, there was a judge who thought he knew everything about families. Malik pointed at each picture, naming everyone. Bara, Cart, M.O. When they reached the last page, a photo from the adoption day, Malik touched Thompson's face in the picture. The happy, very happy buddy. You made to the happiest person in the world. Love you too, son. After Malik fell asleep, Thompson stood at the nursery door, watching his son's peaceful breathing. The room had changed so much in 6 months. Toys everywhere, books spilling off shelves, tiny clothes in the hamper. His phone buzzed with a text from Barbara. Everything set for tomorrow. Mayor confirmed. Press asking for interviews. Another message from Ms. Carter. 3 new adoption applications came in. Single parents. They all mention your story. And finally, from Morrison, proud of you, son. Both of you. Thompson sent quick replies, then turned back to Malik. The moonlight cast soft shadows across his son's face, so peaceful in sleep. On the dresser sat the framed article from their first day in court. Judge halts proceedings for crying baby. Next to it, tomorrow's prepared press release. Innovative adoption program expands, helps dozens find families. But the most important thing wasn't in any article or press release. It was in the quiet moments like this, watching his son sleep. In the chaos of morning routines and bedtime stories. In the balance of being both Judge Thompson and just, Malik stirred slightly, clutching his stuffed elephant. Sweet dreams, buddy, Thompson whispered. Tomorrow would bring ceremonies and speeches, cameras and questions. But tonight, in the quiet of their home, Thompson knew the real story wasn't about programs or protocols. It was about a cry that broke through walls. A love that defied expectations. A family built on choice rather than chance. And as he finally headed to his own bed, Thompson smiled, remembering Morrison's words from months ago. Sometimes the hardest choices show us what matters most. For him, what mattered was sleeping peacefully down the hall, dreaming whatever dreams fill a toddler's mind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new families to help, new barriers to break. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfect. Just a father and son, rewriting destiny, one day at a time.